All right, everyone, it's still hilarious to watch. Like, there are two fan bases that are, like, way overly optimistic. Andrew Yang's fans and Amy Klobuchar's fans. Klobuchar's fans have been re-energized, you know, all 10 of them, by the fact that she had a decent debate performance, and so she gained, like, a little bit of social media clout. The problem is, in the immediate wake of that, if you look at the town halls she's been holding in New Hampshire, which is her main focus is in New Hampshire, she's hoping to come in a distant third and stay in the race through Super Tuesday, trust me. If you look at her crowd's average age, it's basically retirees, which makes sense because the only sort of people who wouldn't be hammered by her tax proposals are people whose income is mainly passive. So, you know, basically stick a fork in it. Amy Klobuchar has never been a viable candidate. She was literally dead on arrival, the same as Bloomberg. Bloomberg's DOA because he's a rich old white dude who's peddling the same neoliberal crap that he's been peddling before, who immediately had to apologize for stop and frisk before he even officially got into the race. He's not going to be the nominee. I'm sorry to the two Bloomberg fans that still exist as holdovers from the 2000s. Your boy ain't going to win. Amy Klobuchar's never been viable. The optics of her initial entry into the race were rambling about climate change for half an hour in the middle of a blizzard. That's not great. Now, I know that she can't control the weather any more than any other humans can, by the way. That being said, it didn't look good. Looking good matters within politics. Perception's up here. Actual strategy and platforms and meaningful shit is down here. The average person doesn't have the attention span to care. The average person will just take whatever a candidate says. Oh, I promise you the moon on a stick. Oh, we're getting moons on the stick. Your candidate doesn't want to give me a moon. That's how the average person operates. You get to learn about strategy and psyops and linguistics and all these wonderful things with which you can screw around inside of a person's brain, because politicians love to do that. The other one is Andy Yang. Yang, who's never broken 4%, I think, in a national poll, who is probably 4th or 5th in the states that he's ahead in. The idea of UBI is nuts. And I used to support it. Like years ago, people have actually challenged me on this, so let me go through this first. Years ago, I made a video on the idea of universal basic income, and I tacitly supported it at the time. I'm like, well, you know, it could work. If you replaced some of the other welfare with it, fundamentally it wouldn't be that problematic. Then I realized what it really meant. What you would be doing is leveling the playing field commie style, in the most literal sense. Because the government can't create actual additional productivity, goods, actual physical goods, actual job positions, actual growth, can't create that. It can only represent that productivity and those goods with money. And so if you have one $1 bill versus 10 of them, the valuation is different, but the total value represented is exactly the same. No matter how much money you print, the overall value can't increase. The only exception is if you want to be a currency manipulator, hide your actual GDP, your actual productivity China style, then you have a little bit of wiggle room, but it's not a huge amount. Here's the problem. Under Yang's plan, where does that money actually come from? Is it liquidated from the government in replacement for other services? Like do you say, well, we'll save that additional money, which is, by the way, many trillions and trillions of dollars. We're going to save that by cutting from the government. Democrat cut programs? I don't fucking think so. So that's not where it's going to come from. He wouldn't be allowed to anyway because the other Democrats would balk, the Republicans would obstruct, he wouldn't get anything done. If you think, by the way, an Andrew Yang presidency would give you UBI anyway, you're fucking nuts. So that wouldn't work. So where's it going to come from? It's going to come from taxes. But I promise it'll only be taxes on the upper class. Where have we heard this before? Every Democratic administration and half the Republican administrations. I'm going to levy a new tax, but don't worry, it won't affect the middle class. Warren says this. Sanders says this. Obama used to say this. Bush says it. Everybody says this. The middle class won't be impacted. Don't worry, people who have to pay a 30% fucking tax rate on mediocre household income. Don't worry, somebody who's paying 20% of all of their productivity off the top before they get a fucking penny, despite the fact that they're at median. Don't worry, people. I'm not going to abuse you anymore. You're already being abused. You know, it's already hard enough for you to get ahead because of the cost of living, because of centralized government driving the price of goods and services through the fucking roof. But don't worry, I won't abuse you any more than you're already being fucking crippled. And it's always a lie. I guarantee you where the money will come from. One of two places. Inflating the currency by printing more money. There's more debt. By the way, again, it doesn't create more wealth. It just spreads it more thinly. It makes the dollar more valueless, which means anyone with savings or with a good that's capable of being denominated in a numismatic sense loses money. That means you, middle classer, or by raising taxes, which will mainly affect the middle class. You know why? If I'm a multinationalist billionaire, or I'm a corporate CEO, or I've got a bank, or even a decent regional business chain, I've got the lawyers and accountants to take advantage of existing loopholes in the tax code to make sure I don't have to pay in any more than I have to. I shill, and I scam, and I skeeve off the top, and I make sure that I write off every pencil that my employees use. I write off everything. I take advantage of every loophole and effortlessly, because I get an army of lawyers, especially if I'm really, really rich. I'm not going to pay anymore. When Elizabeth Warren says, I'm going to make the billionaires pay for my health care program, you're not going to jack shit. You're going to get shit from them. You're not going to get a goddamn dollar from Jeff Bezos because he's got the lawyers and accountants. He's also got the money to bribe the Senate. Fuck you. You're not going to be taking a dollar from me. You're going to be taking money from me. And I know this is the way that it works. All I have to do is look at history for the last half a century. It's the way it always works. Don't fucking get me started thinking that these people... Do you think that they're actually going to throw their own fellow billionaires under the bus? Some of the people running in politics are billionaires. Trump's a billionaire. He's a billionaire that primarily gave the middle class tax cuts. He's the first one to make good on that promise. A long time from the GOP. So, now that I've got my angry rant out of the way, let me talk more about UBI, I suppose the subject of the video. UBI is basically a soft variant of redistributionism a la communism. What you've done is you haven't made any additional wealth. A lot of people say, well, we could all be millionaires if we just gave everyone $1 million. Yeah, you could. The problem is that each dollar would be worth a lot less. If you have a certain amount, a discrete amount of goods, a discrete amount of productivity represented by money, that fiat currency represents a very small proportion of that wealth. And so you can denominate things this way, and you can basically fix the standard price of goods and services as well as the value of your dollar relative to other currencies. If you start giving free money to people, what you're actually doing is redistributing money from anyone that has more than that to people that have less. It's just communism under a different name. UBI is no different than communism. It's not a complete form of it. You're not taking all the money from the rich and giving it to all the poor like Robin Hood, but you get the idea. It's a soft variant of it. It's redistributionist. You haven't created wealth. You haven't created productivity. You haven't created meaningful, lasting change. All you've done is drive the price of goods and services now up so that people at the bottom, they're still at the bottom. There's just more of them. You've taken people that are in the middle class, shoved them down to, the lower middle class. The old lower middle class is now part of the poor. You've actually increased poverty. You're not actually, the only people who benefit from such a system are people with no income whatsoever because they've got nowhere to go but up. So yeah, maybe 10% of the population gains a little bit of wealth, but it's not meaningful. That $1,000 a month isn't going to pay for, they're not going to buy a house. They're not going to have enough money to invest. They're going to be just barely surviving. Andrew Yang's snake oil sham is basically a pile of bullshit. It's the biggest economic piece of bullshit in the current field. And this is a field where you've got people like Warren saying, I want to pay for the health care of illegal immigrants. And people like Sanders saying, I want to give student loan debt forgiveness to people. How am I going to pay for it? By taking money from those same students. You've got so much snake oil in the Dem field, and yet Andrew Yang has managed to outflank them all and propose something that's fundamentally worse than any other proposal on the field. And I think Yang is an open borders fanatic anyway. He's definitely an anti-gunner. When he broke down in tears, oh, I thought of my kids when I saw this school shooting. Fuck you, Andy. No, you didn't. Fucking harpy. You didn't think of your kids. You thought of how you could use your kids as a cloak for your unconstitutional banter, though. I guarantee you. Oh, you thought of your kids in the context of how you could use them for political reasons. So many politicians love to do this. You get this old trope about, like, the dude, he comes out, he's running for office, he kisses all the babies, and the women are like, oh, he's so cute, he's such a man, such a nice man. And then they want to vote for him because he kissed the babies, he pets the puppy on the head. How is this any different? It's a bunch of emotional swill. That's not the way this country was meant to be governed. It was meant to be governed by logic and reason. It's too bad that we have so many unreasonable people in D.C. It's funny because people say, well, you're a libertarian, so ha ha ha, you're already unrealistic. Dude, look at the unrealistic proposals being made by these fucking liberals and so-called conservatives on Capitol Hill every friggin' week. You say that libertarianism is the problem. People who aren't in government, because I guess they have too much common sense and reverence for that old, outdated document, the Constitution. Not our problem. It's not my fault that DC is dysfunctional. It's been dysfunctional for 200 years. We had a brief window of time early on in this country's development, when we were fundamentally a quasi-libertarian society anyway, that we did very, very well. And there have been bright spots since then. The Roaring Twenties, the Homestead Act, some of these other periods of time. You got mass growth, general welfare is increasing, you get the electrification of the continent, all these wonderful things, but Capitol Hill is full of dead brush. It's like there's an old saying, I know it's in Vermont, I don't know if it's primordially a Vermont saying, although I did read it in a book about Vermont proverbs that was released a long time ago. I'll have to at some point do a review of that book. It was actually really fun. And it was something like, there's enough dead brush in any family tree to burn out all the good wood. That's how DC is. Yeah, you got Rand Paul, and Ron's still kind of politically active. You got a few people, Jesse Ventura still alive. But then you get all these fucking losers up there. The Bush family, the Clinton family, and the latter-day Kennedy family. All of these other morons. And then you've got Andrew Yang, probably the biggest fucking moron of them all. UBI, we're going to give you free money. I'm literally campaigning to give you free money. No, you're not. You can't, government can't give money. It can only redistribute value from one person to another. It can't create anything by that. You can't out of thin air create $1,000 and give it any additional value. You've just redistributed it from people who have more than that to people who have less. That's great for the lowest 5 or 10% of the economy. For everybody else, it is a scam. It is a throwaway to literally try to buy the votes of the poor. Thankfully, it looks like people have largely rejected it, because I think in polling aggregates, he's in 6th place, I think, right now, with what, 2.5% or some pitiful number, and he's never been much above that. Good. I hope he drops out soon. He's a moron. That's about all. Peace out.